Unit 6B. There's a man who lives in the unit above mine. His name is Luke, and for the past month I've been hearing strange noises coming from his apartment. At first, I brushed it off, figured maybe he had a friend or girlfriend over, or maybe he was just moving furniture around. I told myself it could be anything, really, anything normal. I even tried to go upstairs personally to ask him about it, to see if something was wrong, but he never answered the door. Luke always struck me as a decent guy, or at least the kind of decent that meant staying in his unit and keeping to himself. I'm pretty sure he worked at a gas station, which would make sense for someone like him living in this dump of a complex. This place isn't the kind that gets put on maps. It's where people go when they want to disappear. Hermits, burnouts, people with pasts. The halls always smell like cat piss and stale loneliness. But for me, it was perfect. Quiet. Forgotten. Just the way I liked it. The few times I ever saw Luke, he was either checking his mail or trudging back from work in that worn-out red uniform. He was quiet, hunched, and moved like a sluggish, mutated snail. But he never gave off an overall threatening vibe. He wasn't the kind of man who'd make you cross the street or someone you'd barely register out in the day. He was just another invisible tenant. Nothing seemed off until the noises started coming from Unit 6B, Luke's place. You could practically hear someone breathe if they were loud enough. And Luke, who once barely made a sound, suddenly wasn't so quiet. I'd hear him talking to someone upstairs, though I never heard anyone talk back. Just his voice, low, mumbling, sometimes agitated. Then came the stomping, like he was throwing himself around in his apartment like a feral dog. I could also hear scratching coming from up there. I assumed it was his furniture being dragged across the floor like he was rearranging the place every other night. Like I said before, for 2 weeks I tried knocking on his door. I figured maybe he was going through something, needed help, or at least a reminder he had neighbors. But he never answered. Eventually, I gave up. That was before the smell. The ventilation systems here are all connected. Whatever stench brews in one unit can drift into the next, and lately a foul smell has started seeping into mine. It wasn't too noticeable at first, a strong, earthy scent that soon turned into a foul smell I can only describe as rancid peanut butter. The first time I smelled it, I thought maybe I'd left something to rot in the kitchen. I tore the place apart looking for it, but nothing turned up. I even cleaned the fridge. A rare event, believe me. But the smell kept getting stronger and always found a way to hide from me. Then came the spores. Tiny white puffs started drifting out of the grates. They clung to surfaces and left sticky trails whenever I touched them. I tried to vacuum and wipe them down from any of my furniture, but every morning there'd somehow be more. By the 4th day of dealing with the spores, I gave in and filed a maintenance ticket. I even called the building manager, Hoffman, but he was as useful as a wet paper towel. "It's probably just dust," he told me over the phone. "The vents are old. I'd advise you to deal with it until we can get someone out there." But someone never came. Nothing got fixed. No one followed up. And the spores kept coming and flooding my apartment. I couldn't sleep nor breathe properly without opening my window. Even then, the stench wouldn't leave. Days went by, and between the noise, the smell, and the ever-thickening spores, I'd had enough. Out of spite, I decided to try one last time, to go back upstairs and confront Luke face to face. It was just after 8 p.m. on a Sunday night. I stood outside Unit 6B for a full minute before knocking. The hallway was silent, eerily so. No footsteps, no muffled TVs behind doors. Just the occasional hum of cars on the road outside and the slow chirp of crickets cutting through the stillness. I knocked again, then again. The 4th time, I knocked harder, loud enough to echo. Nothing. I sighed. "Whatever," I muttered to myself. "Another dead end. Maybe this time I will hire HVAC people to come and fix the vent." I was already turning to leave, but I hadn't even touched the first step until I heard it. A faint creak of a door. I turned around to see that Luke's door opened with just a sliver, and when I stepped back closer to the door, I could see a pale, glassy eye staring out at me through the crack. "Yes?" Luke said. He was quiet and sounded like he was fearful, but outwardly, nothing out of the ordinary that I could see. Hi. I'm Sean. I live below you, Unit 5B. I think something might be coming through the vents, like spores or smoke or something. It's starting to affect my place, and I think it's coming from your place." There was a pause, long and quiet. I didn't mind. I thrive in silence and respect silent and introverted people. But in Luke's case, I felt an uneasy tension coming from within that door. Then, finally, Luke spoke again. "You've seen the smoke?" "Yeah, it smells." The door creaked more open, and I caught a glimpse of Luke's blonde hair that looked greasy. His skin looked too sallow, and his face was uglier than ever. "It's not for you," he said. "It's not for anyone," I replied. "I just want to know what's causing it. Mold? Fungi? If it's dangerous." "It's not dangerous," he said too quickly. "Unless you see her." I blinked. "What?" The door slammed shut. I stood there, staring at the peeling paint on the doorframe. My eyes traced the cracks without really seeing them, wondering, just for a moment, if I was imagining all of it. The noises coming from Unit 6B, the rancid peanut butter smell coming from the vents, and the spores. Maybe the isolation that I have been experiencing has now been eating me away like I was nothing. I stood there longer than I should have, listening to nothing, before I slowly turned back and walked down the stairwell and into my apartment. That night, I slept with a damp towel pressed against the vent. It didn't help keeping the smell at bay. The next morning, I was done waiting. I called a private HVAC technician I found online, someone local, not affiliated with the building. Told him I'd pay whatever he wanted if he could come out that same day to check the vent system in my unit. He showed up around noon. His name was Paul. Young fellow, compact build, smelled like motor oil and mint gum, and looked like a baby duck. He gave the place a quick once-over, then grabbed his tools and a stepladder. When he popped open the vent, he looked confused and even a little nervous. He leaned in closer, flashlight in hand, shining the beam into the dark shaft. "There's definitely something coming from upstairs," he said, coughing hard. "Kind of fungal, maybe." There was a moment of silence before he leaned back and looked at me and pointed at a spot inside of the vent. "You see that?" He gestured for me to take a look. I stepped closer. Inside the vent, clinging to the metal walls, were faint web-like strands. Not dust, not lint. These had a texture, fibrous, pale, slightly glistening in the light. Some kind of growth that smelled more awful closer. "I'd need to get into the unit above to know more," Paul muttered. "Good luck with that," I said under my breath. "Guy barely opens his door. Might as well be a ghost up there." Paul gave a small, uncertain nod. "Well, I'll see what I can do. In the meantime, I'll think of a workaround." He left not long after, and true to his word, he came back a few days later, this time with a buddy, another contractor who I didn't speak to. They installed a filter over my end of the vent and sealed off the ductwork leading to 6B completely. Thick tape, extra padding, metal plating, like they were trying to wall off a disease. "You're good now," Paul said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Whatever was up there won't get into your unit anymore. It should smell better now." I thanked them and paid them with the promise amount under the table. I was now finally comfortable in my own home. The smell began to fade, no more rancid stench in the air, the spores stopped appearing, and for the first time in what felt like forever, my apartment didn't reek anymore. For the first time in weeks, I felt like myself again. Almost. Until last night. It was 3:33 a.m. when I woke up to the sounds of footsteps walking inside of my apartment. Then, a loud bang, like furniture being overturned. Silence followed afterwards. I sat in my bed wondering what I should do. There was a locked safe in my closet where I kept a loaded handgun. Slowly, I slipped out of bed barefoot to retrieve the handgun. The closet was only a few feet away, but it felt like crossing a minefield. I punched in the code with shaking fingers, praying I hadn't fumbled the digits. And with a beauty, the safe clicked open. I now have the Glock 19. I clicked off the safety and held it low as I crept down the hallway. I reached the living room and flicked on the light. Nothing. The armchair was toppled, lying sideways. A lamp shattered on the floor, but no one was there. I checked the kitchen. Nothing. Bathroom, empty. Then I turned toward the hallway that led to the front door and froze. The door to the coat closet near the entrance was cracked open. I always keep it shut. Always. My grip on the gun tightened. Slowly I stepped forward, 1 inch at a time. I reached out with my left hand. A man lunged at me. A blur of limbs came and grabbed my shoulders. I stumbled back, firing. Bang! I blew a hole in the ceiling. The impact of his shoulder knocked me off my feet. We crashed to the floor, gun tumbling from my hand, skittering across the hardwood. He was on top of me before I could even breathe, fists swinging. He was yelling and hollering like a maniac. One punch caught me across the jaw, and it stung. The second I blocked my forearm, pain shot down to my elbow. I twisted, got my knee between us, and kicked him in his balls. He grunted, crawling back, clutching onto his manhood. I scrambled toward the gun. He grabbed my ankle, trying to drag me back, but I kicked wildly, caught him in the chest. When I was close to grabbing the gun, he tackled me again, and he pulled me up by my collar, and we slammed into the wall. He slammed my head so hard I thought I saw stars. My back was against the wall, and I could see from his face a very angry and possessed-looking Luke. "Luke!" I choked out. "What the hell?" He didn't answer, just growled, actually growled, and reached into his jacket, pulling out a knife, and I panicked. I slammed my palm into his throat. His windpipe folded under the blow, and he coughed, stumbling back again. I dove. Fingers closed around the gun as I spun around and fired. Bang! The round tore into his shoulder. He screamed, and the knife fell from his pocket. He clutched his arm as he fell to the floor. I stood over him, panting, gun raised, every nerve on fire. Blood smeared the wood beneath him, dark and glossy. He looked up at me with wide, furious eyes. "Luke, what the hell are you doing in my apartment?" I demanded. He was silent for a long, choking second. Then something changed in his expression. The madness drained, replaced by something far more human. Terror. His pupils widened, breath stuttering. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no. She told me you were next." I stepped closer, Glock still trained on him. "Who told you?" Luke's eyes filled with tears. He was shaking now, mumbling nonsense between shallow gasps. Then, in one final lucid moment, he met my eyes. "She has her eyes on you now." He grabbed the Glock from my hand, and in one swift motion, he aimed it inside of his mouth and pulled the trigger. Blood and brains splattered across the walls, and from what was left of Luke were bits of flesh and brains like a smashed pumpkin. Luke was dead. He killed himself. But why? After the incident, I couldn't leave my house. I don't know why I didn't call the police, but I never did, nor did they ever come. But ever since that night, I've started seeing things. Just at the edge of my eyes, I could see a shape in the corner of the room. A blotch of color that vanishes when I look straight at it. I've caught some glimpses of it, and from the sight of it, it looks like a flower. A fucked up, mutated flower. The smell came back, and soon the spores. Then more, and more, until the air was thicker than ever, my lungs raw, my tongue coated with a bitter and nauseating aftertaste. I started moving furniture, tearing open vents, peeling back wallpaper. I keep thinking if I find it, if I can dig it out, it'll stop. But it didn't stop. It only got worse. Eventually I gave up. Not out of exhaustion, but out of acceptance, maybe. Now I sit alone in my apartment, the way I liked it when I first moved here. Alone, undisturbed, hidden from the world. But I'm not really alone anymore. She's here, tall and slender, her limbs too long for comfort, her neck stretched like a flower stalk reaching for light. Her skin is a pale bone white, and from behind her back and along her arms, and blooming from the base of her neck, flowers grow. Datura, white, trumpet-shaped, wide open like they're drinking in the air. The petals pulse gently, and from them rise those tiny white spores. I don't breathe when she's near. I can't. She talks to me, and I am deeply afraid of her. She tells me that Luke was useless to her, that he broke too easily, that I could now have a chance to prove my worth to her because Luke infested me with her poison. I want to run. I want to tear open my walls and dive into the insulation if it means getting away from her. But I don't. I just sit here, paralyzed, staring into her eyeless face and the flowering poison blooming from her as she talks to me. There is someone knocking on my door, my next-door neighbor. I can hear him through the door telling me that I need to answer the door, that there is a smell coming from the vents, and he knows it's me.